Leadership. How does AI reshape the concept of leadership? Not just corporate leadership, but thought leadership, influence, power itself. Well, let's talk about it from the perspective of thought leadership and the concept of leadership in business and how it might be affected or reshaped by AI. Think about it this way. For centuries, thought leadership has had two secret weapons. The first, information asymmetry. Leaders had knowledge that others didn't. They saw around corners. They held the key to the future with this information. And the second was a charisma, a storytelling, a narrative capability that allowed followers to find and follow this vision, which was enabled by the asymmetry of information. So how about today? Well, the first is really disappearing, and the second, maybe, is as important or more important depending on how things go. Let me explain what I mean by that. So AI is obliterating the information edge. Now anyone can access the same insights, data, and analysis as the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Strategy, it can be automated. Decision-making, optimized. Execution, well, it can be handled by automated AI agents. So what happens when leadership is no longer about knowing more? Does charisma and storytelling matter more? Well, we see two possibilities. One, greater consensus. If everybody sees the same reliable information, they might converge on shared truths, allowing reason and evidence to guide decisions. That requires a mature, critical-minded society that can separate credible data from unreliable sources. That sounds a little unfamiliar these days. Or how about the second future, which is a post-truth polarization? Conversely, if the volume of facts becomes overwhelming, well, leaders and their followers can cherry-pick data that support preconceived beliefs. This fosters a post-truth environment in which factual consensus becomes nearly impossible. When each faction claims the real facts, truth itself becomes contested, and the loudest or most persuasive or most charismatic voice may win. Right now, yeah, it's looking a little more like the latter. The loudest voices, not necessarily the smartest ones, are the ones winning. Charisma is beating competence, and noise is drowning out nuance. So where does leadership go from here for us? Well, it seems clear now that AI won't just change how decisions are made. It will alter what leadership actually requires. As we already explored, leadership isn't just about access to information, that asymmetry of information. It also depends on the persuasion, the storytelling, the charisma that basically align people toward a shared vision enabled by that asymmetric information. So, two paths are emerging for possible futures. We could have the rise of low-ego, high-analytical leaders as AI takes over execution. Well, leadership maybe become more about precision and decision-making and less about charisma, emotion, and persuasion, more about wisdom, ethics, and discernment in the decision-making process. These leaders will succeed not because they can captivate a room or rally a team, but because they are consistently making sound, well-reasoned choices. Or we could have a greater need for deeply human, charismatic leaders. As AI renders decisions increasingly cold and clinical decisions, well, people may crave the opposite, a leader who makes them feel something. In a world drowning in accessible data, trust in a leader's judgment and integrity may become a more important piece than the content actually itself. In other words, people might ask, do I believe you are using this information ethically, rather than what information do you have that I don't? See, you both have their risks. A world run by Vulcan-like rationalists, well, it sounds good, it sounds efficient, until they miss that human emotional factor. A world run by pure charisma, well, history's got some warnings about that. The real challenge is finding the balance. Leaders who can wield AI without losing their humanity, who use data as a tool but understand that connection is a new foundation. So if AI is making knowledge a commodity, what still makes a leader stand out? It's trust, not just in what they know, but in who they are. The future of thought leadership, it's not about being the smartest person in the room, it's about being the one people trust to guide them through the noise. If AI has completely democratized information, well, then the future of thought leadership content will not simply be about having unique insights, it will be about creating a unique perspective that fosters trust, builds deeper relationships. Perhaps to stay relevant, thought leaders might consider shifting their focus in three very specific ways. One, we stop focusing on delivering facts. AI apparently can do that. Instead, we have to shape understanding. We have to make sense of the chaos. We have to bring emotional wisdom to the information. 2, we have to recognize that trust in the storyteller now matters as much or even more than the story itself. As the wonderful author and leadership John Maxwell once wrote, people buy into the leader before they buy into the vision. Leaders cannot take their people to places they have not yet traveled to themselves. The story, yes, can create value and build the trust, but if an audience doesn't believe in the storyteller, the message will lose its impact. And finally, third, maybe we make thought leadership less about broadcasting and more about building community, interactivity over traffic, loyalty over transactions, depth over virality. Instead of simply broadcasting insights, thought leaders must foster conversations, cultivate communities, and create collaborative spaces where ideas don't just spread, but evolve. The future of sustained leadership almost certainly won't rest on an asymmetry of information, but it just might, perhaps recenter itself on an asymmetry of relationships. Perhaps it's the new skill of leadership that will depend on trust, influence, and the ability to navigate the ever-evolving human network and co-create a community of belief. Because in a world where anyone can know anything, leadership isn't about seeing the path, it's about now making the journey matter. Want a little more? You can get that here. It's your story. Tell it well.